Good morning, Rati. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm fine. What about you?
I'm good. So, see, the biggest connect that the two of us have here is that both of us are artists. We're traditional artists from classical art forms turned into professionals here at MBA. So, how do you think being an artist has actually helped you with your MBA, your placements, or just life in general?
Being an artist has had like a huge role and impact, and it has helped me with MBA as well. So I'm trained in Bharatanatyam for 4 years, and it's been great. The whole point is the sheer amount of effort that goes into getting out one act is just tremendous. Like, I clearly remember for any performance that I had to put out, there were like mudras involved, postures, that poise. So that attention to detail is something that has crept in very well. And I feel that is something that I apply very well for my MBA, maybe in presentations, like, is it looking fine? Does the font need to be adjusted? Like, greater attention to detail, and that sometimes is a pain, but okay. The other thing I would say is the ability to multitask, honestly, because, as I just mentioned, like, eventually at the same time, you're doing so many tasks simultaneously that it just helps you with, balancing all your assignments, maybe curriculars, extracurriculars. So it's great. But like, how about you, since even you are trained in Carnatic music?
I've been trained in Carnatic music since I was 4. So
okay.
It's almost, say, 18, 19 years of training now.
Damn, that's great.
It's been very interesting for me because, like you said about multitasking, since I've done this since I was 4, I was the girl who was the prayer girl in school, who was also dancing and who was also singing in the school anniversary event, and also had to do the math right.
Oh, okay.
So, the juggling process has always been a constant thing for me.
Right.
And especially with the block system, I think that's aided me a lot because of how much we've got to manage. And at the same time, not letting go of our interests, our hobbies and all that. So that's been a very huge plus for me. And with music or any art form for that matter, we gain this level of discipline.
Absolutely.
Because there's this whole sense of you wake up in the morning and you're going to practice and all that. Do I still do that is a huge whole other question.
Right.
Right. So
we just mentioned about the block system, so it makes sense you can't have that.
Right. So it's been helpful in the sense that I know what I want to do. I stick to the time schedules and I plan my work out very neatly.
Right.
So the discipline also helps with your time management. Another thing that I most importantly learned as a musician was to break down complex things. When there is, say, a line that we can't sing at a go and you don't know how to go about it, you break it into smaller notes or swaras, right?
Right.
So now I started using that approach when I found something complex to learn.
Correct.
I've always been doing that, especially here because it's a whole level of advanced learning and there are things that words I've never heard about before.
I agree, because even we had that for like initial few years of my dancing was just learning the basic steps. And then you just came to putting up an act together and, presenting it. So I get that point where you're like, breaking down a complex problem into its smaller versions and working on them independently.
And I think we also avoid this tendency to take a shortcut. We make sure we go, because we're used to doing the whole right from basics, like you said. We go step by step and say, I've learned this, then I'm going to learn this, and then keep going on.
Yeah, building up on that. Yeah.
Right. So that's how that has worked out. So yeah, being an artist has been fun. And even in my interview, I think half of my interview went in a conversation about me being an artist and why I, despite, singing in a film and all of that, why do I still want to go for a boring 9-to-5 job is what they call it.
Right.
So around, say, 20 minutes of my interview went into convincing them, saying, I don't find a 9-to-5 job boring and I find that equally interesting for me to do. So it's really been helpful in every way you can think of.
That's great.
Your peace of mind, of course. I think the first way I connected with both the batches was also through music.
Right. I agree with you on that. Like, because I think a talent night was a testimony to that, like how we could bring out our talents and like present it.
It was fun as well, and it was great to see how we made sure we had like a Bharatanatyam dancer, and then we did a bunch of film songs, and then there was like a lot of dancing and stuff. So it was like super fun. So I think that way our art has helped us carry ourselves forward and it becomes a part of a personality at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you, because like whenever you need that break, like that hectic schedule and you need some time off, I think we just turn to that. Like I agree when you would turn to that, because like I heard you play in your room as well. So like,
yeah, we live right under each other. Great. Another shift that you've had, apart from moving from being an artist to an MBA grad, is that engineering to finance, an internship in finance with Mauritius Advisors. So how come? Why?
Yeah, so I think I was a hardcore BTech person when I was like 4 years of my BTech. So I was doing it in mechanical and I was like, this is the way forward. Like I will move in this direction. And then we had just one elective being offered that semester and I was like, let me just take it up. You let me see what is this all, this about. And it turned out it was industrial engineering and management. So they dealt with like basics of management and how that like marriages well with engineering concepts. And then we had like a bit of exposure to economics. And I was just completely fascinated. I was like, wow, like the price elasticity and like the cross price elasticities. And I'm like, this is interesting. You know, this is something that I can like, I'm finding it interesting apart from like doing the normal BTech. And then I was like, okay, let me just go ahead with this. And the next block turned out to be another one where I had a lean startup management course. So that was setting up an entire manufacturing unit from scratch. So like you had to look at where you want to set it up, why you want to set it up here, like what is the cost involved, what is the financing and all of it. And I felt it was at that moment that I felt like finance and that number crunching, like in a very naive way to say so, but like that is what like really, you know, pulled me towards itself, was a number crunching and doing the basic numbers. Though it's still challenged after coming to BITSoM, like finance is not just number crunching. Yes. But like, you know, that was my starting point for why I like finance. And then like my internship also was in that domain where I wanted to explore more of finance. And like now I'm dead set that that is my way to go. So yeah.
That's lovely.
But like for you, I feel it's completely opposite because you were a fin background and you're moving towards a general management role currently.
Right.
So like, why that shift? And like, for me, like, how would that shift?
All right. So, I mean, see, me landing up and having a fin background was more of, I mean, it's not surprising because, I mean, even in school, it's either commerce or science.
Right.
So, I mean, I knew I did not like physics.
Okay.
So, I knew that and I said, okay, I'll go for commerce. And then once I did a commerce, it was, okay, BCom. And then I decided I'll be majoring in accounting and finance. So then I figured I was badly in classes then because I was also, a huge part of my life was culturals and all of that.
Right.
So I would mostly be there. I was not in classes. But then I want to do something even more interesting. I didn't want to be yet another BCom grad from University of Madras. Right. So I said, okay, let me do my USCMA.
Oh, okay.
So I started doing that there. And as it turned out, in my second year of college, we also had a separate papers for cost accounting and management accounting.
Okay.
Which is when I found it very interesting.
Right.
Because that was the first time where you're introduced to the idea of using accounting and finance in decision making.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Right. So it got really interesting for me because here I get to apply a certain amount of creativity as well in the decisions.
Right.
And there's also an equal amount of numbers involved. So that was very interesting for me. And right from childhood, I've been this person who's always want to know everything about everything.
Correct.
So you put something in front of me, I want to know where it came from, how it was made, who made it, why did they make it.
Right.
So when I have so many questions, I figured it is hard for me to channelize all of my energy towards just one direction.
Fair enough.
So when I came here and the whole placement conversation happened is when I realized there is something called general management and that looks like my thing.
Oh, great.
I mean, MBA is also, I think most of us who are at an MBA are here doing an MBA because we are interested in multiple dimensions of the same aspect. So that's literally what we do.
And like the curriculum is also facilitating that, like where you have so many different courses back to back, you're like new perspective for everything. So
and it's very interesting. Especially when the professors also try to make sure that they try to correlate the concept that they've learned in the previous, paper or the blog.
Right.
It gets even more interesting. You're like, oh, so this is how you look at that.
Exactly. Now it's a complete circle. So it makes sense.
Exactly. It makes sense. So it was proper and very interesting for me to say, okay, let me pick up GenMan now.
Yeah.
And after picking up GenMan, because you get into your internships, like say 3 months into joining college, 3-4 months into joining college. Yeah. So it was like super fast. And then we had a lot of marketing papers as well.
Yeah.
So from GenMan now, I'm actually moving more towards marketing. You can say I'm partial towards it maybe. But it was very interesting for me because we had, say, marketing management by Professor Piyush Kumar.
Right.
Where he literally taught us how to approach marketing as a CFO.
I agree. Like his entire concept was like start from the top line and look at how do you maximize that, like through your marketing tactics. So,
and for a lot of us, it was like a very huge bouncer because for me, marketing management, because I've done that in say school and college, it's about learning theories and how this is done, how that is done, and how different companies approach what. So it's been a proper theoretical class where there are no numbers involved whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then you're having this professor who's talking full finance, and it was the second block if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
So quite a few of us were lost at that point because you just walk in your MBA and they're like top line, bottom line, maximize it.
And you're like, why in a marketing course would you have that? Like, you know, like, why would you do that?
So that's why it got very interesting for me because like I said, it was a proper mix of now say finance, numbers and all of that, and at the same time creative decisions.
Correct.
So that slowly evolved into when, like, especially during my interview as well with the Aditya Birla group. So I had a question where they said, you've put marketing as a specialization that you would like to pursue.
Correct.
So why would you do that? To which my answer was something as simple as, that's something I've grown up with. Right?
Fair enough.
Yeah, like since we've been like kids, we've been marketed to, be it biscuits, candies.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting now when you learn that the reason that Dairy Milk bar was like at the lowest rack in say in Nilgiris or whatever the supermarket was, is because it is most accessible, and that was a marketing thing by itself.
Yeah.
So it is very interesting, and eventually we grow up, we end up marketing stuff. Say you want to get sponsorship for cultural, so you do that again.
Yeah, right. Colleges, we've all done that, like getting the fests and all of that.
Right. And then at the interview, in fact, I did mention saying at the interview right now, I'm marketing myself to you.
Absolutely. And I think consumer behavior was another eye-opener in that the chocolate thing you just mentioned. Like that course has been splendid in just telling us that, you know, everything is just so orchestrated, and it's not like it's just like that.
It's exactly. It changed the way I shop things. I mean, you remember the mall assignment where we had?
That was fab.
Right. So we had to go and meet people, the shopkeepers in a mall, and ask them as to why they place things in different ways and all that. So now when I go to a mall to just shop, say buy a clip or something, it's right in my brain, where I'm like, what buyers are they leveraging here? What are they trying to get into? Why am I preferring this product which is on my right hand side over what's on my left? So you go to that extent, and it's actually like, you can say bothered me, rather affected me to that extent that I really want to do this. So now behavioral sciences were also very interesting for me. Now, so marketing became a combination of say creativity, finance, and now behavioral sciences as well. So it's just constantly evolving, and now I'm doing a course with, on digital marketing. So now that here again with marketing management, I mean MRM, marketing research and methodology, there's a lot of analytics and again more numbers, but now these numbers are from a different perspective.
And like how he used regression that we learned in first block, like, you know, it made complete sense why they use this and how they use this for analysis. Like we were thinking, okay, regression occurs, it exists, but like the application of it was something we learned like just now. So
coming back to the proper full circle. Right. So
like this year has been a full circle is what you can say now.
So it was very interesting again for me, because until now we approached say numbers from the company's perspective or the CFO's perspective. Now we're looking at how our consumers responding, how do we, you know, allot numbers to that. So that again got very interesting, and again we spoke about the biases there as well. So it's an amazing journey for me with respect to how much I really started enjoying marketing and all that. So yes.
Also like the biases that you mentioned, like, you know, this has been brought up a lot in classes. So what is it one bias that probably, you know, that stood challenged when you were preparing for your summer internships, or like now that you're transitioning to like Gen Man and marketing role, any bias or a heuristic that you had regarding that and that got like, challenged completely?
There's a lot of things. I can't say there was just one thing. To start with, I think there's this whole, I don't know if you would call it a bias, but there's a sense that you know your profile, you know yourself very well, and you know you're going to ace your interview. You know you're going to get shortlisted for that company. Right. But then the thing with BITSoM is what we pride ourselves on is the whole quality of our peers. So it's only when you get to that summer internship placements point you realize that everyone is good. It's not just you. It's not just you who has good ACADS and an extraordinary profile. Everybody has that. So that was challenge to me, because it was very interesting, right? Like be it school or college, it was rather a cakewalk for me because of how I managed to, you know, manage everything, the time management aspect of it, or how I was very active in extracurricular activities and all that. Now here everyone's done it. So how do you stand out again?
Absolutely,
So that becomes a question, especially when it came to interviews and all that.
And it's like everyone has so many different interests. Like I was like, oh wow, like you run your own like Instagram, you know, account for like food blogging, you have your own teaching account, and you're like, yes, wow, everyone's doing something, you know, you feel like it's more like an inspiration for you to like, you know, pursue what you want to do and like get going, you know, because people are doing it around you.
Right. And I remember this whole conversation where one person was like, I work for a startup and I haven't gotten my certificate yet. And this other guy is like, oh, that's my startup, I'll get the certificate for you. So now that is something you really don't expect anywhere.
Absolutely.
So that was one thing. And I think quite a few interviews, at least of mine, were focused on behavioral, you know, applications. And it was not technical where they said, give me the formula of, say, how do you do the NPV for this or the IRR for this. It was more about, I remember my Aditya Birla Group's interview, after our group discussion. She actually asked me to analyze how I performed in the group discussion.
Oh, wow. That's
so
unique.
The first time it was like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate yourself as a listener? How would you rate your summary? How inclusive were you in the conversation? So now those are questions you definitely do not expect in any interview.
Like, how do you answer? They are like, you're like standing on the like sword, like, you go this side, you're still like messed up, and you go the other side, you don't know how to handle it.
So it was very interesting how we had to approach all that. And the third bias and most important one was that with respect to summer internships, all of us are competitors.
Yeah.
Right. So I expected everyone to be, oh, this is mine. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
It's my work. It's my priority.
Correct.
And all that. But I never saw that even once.
Oh,
not even once.
Yeah. Like, I would second that because collaboration was great. Like, you could just speak to anyone like, hey, I'm not able to get a MECE structure for this. Like, could you help me out? Like, yeah, sure. Like, this is how you do it. That is how you go about it. And you're like, oh, thank you so much. Like,
right.
It's helpful at the end of the day.
Right.
Yeah.
And not just maybe academically or that, but even like I remember during my interviews, like the Birla Group interview went on for a whole day.
Yeah.
So even before I asked, someone had gotten me my breakfast, someone got me my lunch.
Yeah, right.
They were in the room when they knew the results were coming out. They were like,
Correct.
It's okay, let me sit this out with you.
Yeah.
How about I look out on your mails, like you go like sleep for a while, take a break.
Yeah.
So now all of that is something that's very simple or small.
Correct.
But it makes a very huge difference, especially when you're in a very stressful environment at that point. So I think there were a lot of biases, a lot of assumptions that I came with that were broken during the internship process, actually. Right. And for you, I mean, what do you think at BITSoM has helped you the most with your process? How did you handle with the stress? And the jump to finance must have been huge for you. And interviews would have been technical for you. So how did you handle that?
So for me, one thing I would like to credit BITSoM was with the faculties. Like, honestly, like being a BTech student and coming directly to MBA, and people over here, especially like people who had done finance, they speak in finance jargon, and you're just sitting and you're like, what have you just spoken? Give me some time to recollect, because like the way we learn by like, what it means, and then we're not very used to with the jargons, but like you guys are very comfortable with that. So, but like the one great thing about like the first course, that was FADM, that was done by Mark Finn.
Right.
Like he did not use a single jargon in class.
Yes, wonderful.
He used like the real-time cases. He used like, I remember Dr. Reddy's, reports, and he asked us to analyze that and learn from that. So I feel that application-based learning is something that really helped me in understanding the base concepts.
Even the quizzes, he was open for discussion. He said, it's fine, I know it's a quiz, I know you're getting graded on it, but get help. Try and understand
like,
what
and
it
I
was
would
about.
encourage all the people who know finance in class to go around and like to move from your seats and create chaos in the room and like help people who are not able to understand the concepts or are freshers to this.
Right.
So like I feel that was something that learning is something that has been great. Like FADM has been a great starter for me in finance. And I think I could second that with Milind Shikhande's class where he spoke about bonds and stocks, and I'm like, wow, it's opening a whole corporate finance door for me.
Right.
Like I got the three basic statements of finance, and I'm moving to like corporate finance. And the concluding one was Dan Godey's course.
Oh, wonderful.
So his course was, at the bias that I was talking about, number crunching, it got shattered because he has given us an Excel. He's like, okay, enter numbers. What do you understand from the numbers? The story. And he's just sitting there. It's profit because it's positive, it's a loss. But he was like, no, you have to analyze the entire company, go through their annual reports, try to figure out the situation the company is, and then try to, look at the narrative around it. So like that whole application of finance in a broader strategy perspective is something that has been a great learning, like through this 1 year of learning finance across professors.
Very true. And for me, even though this is what I've learned for say 2 + 3 years, 5 years, the courses gave me a very fresh perspective.
Right.
And over here, it was interesting the questions people asked. Because for me, because from 11th, I've done this, some things were just understood, underlying statements. I was just like, huh. So you don't question things because that's what you've done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but for engineers, when it's like a super new concept fresh for you guys, you ask me questions. People ask me questions. I was like, I don't know the answer.
Because I remember sitting next to you and picking your brains in like accounting. I'm like, how is this like, how is this structure making sense? How is this flowing? Like, you tell me this is this, but why is this? Like, give me explanation.
Exactly. So it was very interesting for me because I never asked the question. So I never got the answer. So now I had to make sure I was able to explain this in the right way. And the communication had to be clear. I can't, say something and fix it up. So it was like equally challenging for anybody from finance because it was a whole teaching aspect also as well. And while teaching, we were learning. This is how you look at this number. This is how we look at it.
Yeah, I mean, because I remember I was like, okay, you're telling me this flows like this from this statement to this, but why? Like, give me a reason. Like, there has to be a mathematical way to look at it. Like, we're so used to that way. So like that was a great conversation that we had in class also.
Oh, yeah, it's lovely. And this conversation has been wonderful as well.
It has been awesome. Yeah.
Yep. Hopefully next year we come up with more jumps in our career and more things to talk about.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
It's
been
been
a
awesome.
wonderful conversation.
Great.